Hello and welcome to our Voices in Montessori podcast, brought to you by the Greenspring Center for Lifelong Learning. An education capable of saving humanity is no small undertaking, so let's get to work. I'm Tamara Sheesley Balis, and our mission here at the Greenspring Center is to elevate and support the critical work of Montessori educators, leaders, and schools. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have Shawn Edwards with me. She's going to talk about leading communities with transformational intention. Shawn has been involved in the Montessori world for over 34 years. She's AMI trained at the Washington Montessori Institute and the mother to 3 Montessori children. She's been a head of school for over 15 years, and she's opened her own business, Tool House, how-to tools for parents and schools. She consults, coaches, and offers workshops, and is an instructional guide and a practicum advisor for the Center for Guided Montessori Studies. Shawn is a positive discipline trainer and received a master's degree in transformational leadership and coaching in 2017. Welcome, Shawn. We're so happy to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tamara. And thank you so much for hosting this podcast and allowing me to share a little bit of my expertise and my experience and some little nuggets and tools that I've gained over the years that hopefully will be helpful to people.
Well, I'm sure, because you have a lot of experience, and certainly, especially the combination of having Montessori, positive discipline, transformational coaching training, that's extraordinary. We're delighted to have you.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of synergy between those 3 disciplines, and it really guides me in my workshops and my trainings and all the consulting and coaching I do.
I think that that's probably very accurate. I think when you find the heart of the matter, those always align, right? When you're looking at the heart of so in Montessori, we're looking to the heart of children and supporting them. And I can see how those would align so well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to dig right in. So
yes,
love to have you start out today by talking about what it means to lead a community with transformational intention.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think myself, as many leaders in Montessori have found themselves, starting out in education, being trained to work with children, doing a fine job of that, and being able to take all of those Montessori principles, freedom and responsibility, fostering independence, fostering a love of learning, really displaying a strength in respect, responsibility, and resourcefulness as we're mentoring these children and helping them develop and grow and guiding them to their full potential. So we do that for a while, and then we find ourselves in administration, and we want to apply these same principles, right? We want to be able to work with adults in the same way, where we're interacting with them with a sense of freedom and responsibility. We want to foster their independence. I mean, they do have the training. We want them to be able to go and just kind of be in the space and do their thing and just be available kind of as a coach and somebody to touch base with. We want them to continue to have that love of learning. We want to interact with them with a sense of respect, responsibility, and hoping that they're resourceful. And then we find that adults are much more challenging in some ways to work with the children, because they've grown up and they've developed maybe some defense mechanisms, and they've received messages throughout their lives from the world, and they're a little bit harder to unpack. Oftentimes with children, what you see is what you get. With adults, it's a little bit different. So I discovered in myself that I wanted more tools when I moved into administration. And at some point, I received the positive discipline training, or I became a trainer. And then I went back to grad school and received a master's degree in transformational leadership and coaching. And the particular program that I went to, the Wright Graduate University for the Realization of the Human Potential, was very Montessori-like. So it was like Montessori for adults. And it was really not what I expected. What I learned was everything's about me. All of my interactions, all of the experiences that I have with these other people, whether they be positive or negative. It's really what I'm inviting from people. And so I think that that was something I never thought of as I was moving into administration. And that little line that I just shared with you, has layers and layers of depth to it.
Mm.
But I think why what I love to do is talk with people a lot about setting the tone in their culture of their schools, but doing it from a place where they really have unpacked themselves and they know themselves and they know what they're inviting and they know what their defense mechanisms are. We can't change other people. We can't force people to behave in the ways that we would like them to behave. Uh, but we can shift how we interact with people so that we're inviting what it is, kind of envision and image what it is that we would like to see happening.
So,
And so there are tools and there are ways in which we can do that, which I will share at the conference, and we'll go through a bunch of experiential learning opportunities.
mhm.
I think the best way to understand some of these concepts is to actually um, do these experiential, have these experiential interactions with one another and actually get in the mindset, the mindset of the staff or the child or the parent, so that you understand yourself better. You understand yourself better under stress, and you start to understand your staff, and then teach them how to do the same. Our schools are kind of reflections of us, and classrooms are reflections of the teacher.
I I I think that's a completely true statement. And when we as leaders see that things are not working, the first place we have to look at is ourselves, and we have to take a
Hmm.
look in the mirror. Can you share an example of something that came up for you, something that you learned about yourself through this process that made a really a significant difference in your school communities?
Well, I do know that there's probably many, many. One that kind of comes to mind immediately is there was a time when I was leading a school, and there was a very um, challenging situation at hand that I worked through with the board of directors that involved an employee, and some allegations of inappropriate discipline. And so, as the board and I worked through that together and made decisions about how to proceed with that particular employee, there were big feelings about that, right? All across the school, and from the staff and from parents that didn't even have children in that particular classroom. And I think what I found out about myself as I moved into this graduate program, and this is what happened, is when the board and I felt like we were doing the right thing because we had done our we had gone through the process and the procedures that you would go through in terms of investigating these allegations, and also even inviting the state to come in and take a look and give us some feedback. I think what happened when certain people were becoming a little bit assertive and aggressive about their feelings about this,
Mm.
and confronting me in a way like that they weren't trusting and maybe not believing, and they didn't want to, right? They wanted to advocate for this particular employee, and I became very superior. I moved into superiority, and I think that that's something that I learn about myself, is that when I get stressed, I move into a place of superiority,
Mm.
and I kind of shut down, and I'm right, and this is the way it is. And that wasn't a way to that wasn't a way to engage in a transformational way with these people, to help them understand the process and to help them have faith. I was low on empathy. I was low on attunement. I was low on rapport when I had many of these reactions or interactions. So, yes, I learned a lot about myself, during that course, and or during my master's degree. And then since have been able to apply a lot of them. So when I opened up the school in Solana Beach, California, it was an interesting situation because it was a school that was purchased and acquired by Laporte. I was working for Laporte at the time. But what was beautiful for me is I was able to hire all my own staff, and I just, I was almost finished with this graduate program, but I felt like I had, and it's not so much about the tools, because you kind of have to internalize these concepts and understand them at a deeper level. But I was able to really develop a community and a school culture that was positive, that was based in accountability and feedback, and also vulnerability. So we were all able to be, together and support each other with our assets and our liabilities. And I think that that's really, really important.
Well, I really appreciate the vulnerability you just brought to the conversation even, and your willingness to share kind of that tendency to be right. And I and can you share with us how you, as you moved into your new school, when you felt that start to come up, because I'm sure there were moments, right, where that same
Mm-hmm.
habit or way of being, what was the strategy that you used to go back to your intention around who you wanted to be as a leader rather than an old way of
Yeah. Well, you know what, Tamara, it takes practice like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, and don't mean to, I'm going to get off topic for just a second, but like when I'm teaching positive discipline training to a group of parents or to a group of staff, they immediately want to know, what is the fix? What is this one tool that I can use, with this child so that they'll stop doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, um, what do I need to do for this employee to stop acting like this, or this parent to stop being hostile, and things like that. And like I said earlier, it's not, it's usually about us. You kind of have to look at yourself first. And it also takes practice. So once you understand yourself a little bit and your defense mechanisms and your tendencies when you're stressed, um, then you can catch yourself. And you can catch yourself before you go into stressful situations. So I know that, as leaders, um, of schools, we have difficult conversations, right? Challenging conversations, sometimes with parents, sometimes with staff. And so I started coaching myself before I would go into these meetings, thinking, and I would say to myself, oh, this is going to be fascinating. I'm going to learn so much instead of, oh gosh, this is going to be horrible. And I'm going to have to, be really firm and strict with this family or this, staff member, because they're going to want this and they're going to want that. I would coach myself to stay engaged, and, not, and being engaged in a transformational way is you're maintaining eye contact and you're not formulating your responses. You're taking in the information and you're responding, with vulnerability, with compassion, with empathy, with understanding. And then that whole idea of kindness and firmness, one of the things I was not historically good at, or practiced at, was acknowledging and affirming and showing understanding before I set the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a huge difference. Setting boundaries is really, really important. And if you're kind and firm at the same time all the time, instead of just when it's needed or just when it's necessary, I think it makes a profound difference, because you're predictable. People know what they're going to get. They're not going to test your boundaries. They're not going to feel dismissed. They're not going to feel unseen. They have a voice, and yet they respect you because you do ultimately set the boundary.
Mm-hmm. It's just like in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings, really, we are all the same. So in the classroom, the guides struggle when they try to only bring a sense of order. And as you said, that kind of clarity around boundaries every once in a while, because the class
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know how to operate. So when in the classroom, the strongest guide is a guide who's always kind, always clear, always firm, always holds those boundaries with love and respect. And that's exactly what adults need from leaders as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're not going to be testing the boundaries, and they want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what the expectations and the standards are. They may not like all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody likes everything, but as long as it's fair and you show up in a predictable way with kindness and firmness and with engagement
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of transformational engagement, which is, more about some of those adjectives I used with attunement and rapport and
Mm-hmm.
connection, and without taking information in, active listening, and not formulating your response in your head right away because you're protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think we have to let go. We have to practice those things. And it's wonderful when you can meet with your staff and have them understand, oh gosh, when I get stressed out, I get really, really controlling. And then all of a sudden in the classroom, the children are engaging in power struggles with me, or they're being defiant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or I really want to please everybody. So I get a little bit of retaliation because, maybe sometimes I don't stick to the rules and the boundaries that I've set because I want everybody to be happy, which is not really possible. And then all of a sudden, I have some students in the classroom who are resentful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so also not feeling capable, like when you're shutting down and not really taking a firm stance and managing and kind of um, being in the background and not dealing with situations when they occur,
Mm-hmm.
that can cause confusion with the children and shut down. And the superiority piece too, like I was talking about, when you become really superior, and you're right, that's also very intimidating and scary. So you get people that shut down. So you don't want a school environment that's so quiet that nobody's saying anything because they're terrified of you. If you have people that are power struggles and arguments and, just arguing about every little thing and pushing buttons and limits, you might be too controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you might be, just trying to please everybody too much if you have some retaliation and some revenge and some tears and hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have, people shutting down and refusing to join a committee or do anything, it's again, maybe you're presenting yourself as somebody who's always right and nobody else is going to be good enough. So there are activities that you can do to really dive into this so you can understand yourself better. And then exercises you can do to practice with your team. And everybody knows who everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody can get together and practice these things. And then also as a leader, as you come to understand your team a little bit, meaning the staff and the teachers, who's really good at coming up with great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a new playground built, and you know who the people are that you're going to call on to form a committee and come up with their beautiful idea. You know who your project managers are going to be. They're your controlling people, and then you have your HR people, the people that want everybody to be happy. Those are the people that are going to be at those events where you're presenting your plan for the new playground, and they're going to be taking care of the parents and making sure they're fed, and they're going to throw the parties um and then um you've got your squares, you've got your people that are not so much about what's going on with the people, but they're behind the scenes because they're kind of like one-man band people who like to work on their own, and they're crunching the numbers and they're looking at every single detail and letting you know what's missing. And it takes all of those personalities to make organizations, including schools, work. And so, yes, we want to understand who we are under stress, but there are assets around those too. And I
Mm-hmm.
think as leaders, if we can know what those are, we can help these people have roles outside of their classroom and in their classroom where they can really shine.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you can have vulnerable and very open conversations about, oh, what happened with that, with that at that parent teacher conference. Oh yeah, do you think that maybe you got a little controlling, or did you become superior, or were you shutting down, or were you going to take over? Um, so it's very powerful.
So do you have all of those? So it sounds like when you work with a school, and I'm assuming we're going to do this in the conference as well this summer, but when you work with the school, it sounds like you're giving almost a personality test to the staff. Is that accurate?
We do a little, it's not like the Myers-Briggs. It's not nearly that complicated. It's a tool that I use through positive discipline, where you just basically are, looking at 4 different words and then choosing the one that really triggers you, because they're not nice words. They're not pleasant words. They're like meaningless and unimportance and rejection and hassles. And so it's pretty simple, and it's usually people feel, oh yeah, that is really me. Those are my assets and liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have fun with it too. You kind of create a bumper sticker, that kind of encapsulates your assets, and one of your assets and one of your liabilities, and then working together as teams. Who are the other people in the room that share, my persona under stress, and let's get together and talk about that and support each other and think about creative things. And then you take that back and you do it with your staff. And I think what's really important is that everybody has a chance to understand everybody,
Mm,
um, and to be able to support each other. So we do this in the classroom with positive discipline. It's everybody's valuable,
mm-hmm.
and our goal as a community of children and with adults in the classroom, we want everybody to feel capable, valuable, and powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the world wants that, right? Everybody wants to feel capable, valuable, and powerful. And so how do we support each other in um, really highlighting the strengths and, supporting the areas where we're challenged. So it's not punitive, it's not negative, it's solution-oriented problem solving and support.
That's so interesting. And then can you tell us about a time where you had somebody who maybe wasn't successful when you first worked with them, but then you were able to bring this work to them and you got to see their assets and liabilities and work with them differently? And like, I would love to have a real life example for folks of
Mm-hmm.
of the difference this could make.
Yeah. Well, I did at Solana Beach, I did have a staff member, a teacher who um, was very um, charismatic, very outgoing, social and emotional intelligence was great. And I think um, that sense of capability sometimes kicked in where when this particular staff member didn't feel capable,
Mm,
there would be some shutdown. And you would go to observe the classroom. And I remember one time observing, and there were like um, color tablets, in the basket with the rugs, and dust on different areas of material, and things like that. So what you need, what has to be done with these people, it's really frustrating too, because it can be time consuming.
mhm,
And you can observe and have a meeting and observe and have another meeting and observe and have another meeting. And maybe it's not improving as much as you would like it to, especially for, my tendency is, well, hey, you've already been told, my tendency of moving into superiority, that was really hard for me, right?
mhm,
So, yeah. So, what really needs to happen is, you need to encourage and empower, um, and little steps by steps. And I'm not saying this is true for everybody, right? So you may have some employees that have just completely checked out and maybe they're on their way to a new career. But when you kind of know that they're struggling and they love the children and they love the work and they don't want to leave,
mm,
then you give them small baby steps, and you do this in the classroom too. So, let's talk about your observation. Yeah, tell me how you're feeling about your classroom. So you have them share, or I had her share and show understanding. And first there was nothing wrong, right?
mm,
Well, everything's fine, and then, oh, okay, well, so some of the things that I saw, with this, can you tell me about that? oh, well, it's just so hard, and then the rationalization, the justification kicks in. And this is more true for adults than it is children, because children are just like, oh, well, I couldn't do it. It was too hard. But lots of rationalization and justification. So you kind of have to move through that and then just say, okay, well, let's come up with a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pick one little area, like let's talk about preparation of the environment in terms of the end of the day. What
Mm-hmm.
does it look like now? What do you think? What can we do, to kind of improve this situation so that the fraction materials don't have dust all over them and the color tablets are no longer, in the rug basket. So it starts there, but there are other things like the children were kind of spiraling out of control as well, because preparation of the adult and the environment are super important for that, right? So, okay, well, great. I will come in and, I'll be happy to come in and help you, so you go in and you kind of do, the work with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then just like you would a child, when you feel like they can do it a little independently. Okay, hey, so next, do you want me to come in next week too, or do you think you got this? And so then she starts to feel capable. And, at first it's like guarded. But once that teacher's able to um, adjust the systems and routines in her classroom so that the children are actually held more accountable and she's holding herself more accountable for preparing the environment. It may be slow and, you just chunk it. But that's an example of, someone who was at the end of the year able to get that classroom back in order and felt good about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then we started talking about the classroom management. And this is a person that if you met, you would never see. I mean, you would never think that she wouldn't have complete control of her environment, in terms of the materials and the management of the children. And she was struggling. And oftentimes these people who don't feel capable or they fall into kind of that assumed inadequacy role, they
Mm-hmm.
don't ask for help either.
Mm-hmm.
So as leaders, I think we need to be observing a lot. We need to have one-on-one check-ins with our teachers. We need to know where they're at, and we need to always, empower and encourage, move into that as opposed to threatening, disciplining, punishing, at first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's one example. I'm sure there are more.
Thank
And
you. That's
that one was,
helpful.
yeah, that one was hard for me because I just wanted things to get better, and I'm like, well, what's in my mind, what's so hard? And knowing that I move into that, I can check myself and know that there's a better way.
Well, and I think that it sounds, I want to underscore for everyone that what you did also was really meet her where she was. So she had
Mm-hmm.
a need not to be told how to do it, but instead to work shoulder to shoulder with you. I've had a number of situations where I've said to a guide, okay, so lesson planning, we've got to make sure this is happening. And then they're bringing in their lesson plans and it's not really happening. And
Mm-hmm.
so we bring in the table of contents of the albums and we sit together
Mm-hmm.
and lesson plan, because if somebody's not, what we know is children do well if they can. I like to say that people do well if they can. And so,
Yes, absolutely.
right. So if they need a little extra support, they need that shoulder to shoulder time. As
Mm-hmm.
leaders, part of really transforming our school communities, it's meeting people where they are. And I can
Mm-hmm.
really hear that in what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes. And I use the phrase capable, valuable, and powerful, which
mm-hmm,
is actually comes from Stephen Glenn and Jane Nelson's book, Raising Self-Reliant Children in a Self-Indulgent World.
mm-hmm,
But that's, yes, so you're recognizing that there's a lack of capability there. So you're supporting that and working with them closely it also helps them feel valued. Now they're being seen.
that's
Um,
right.
and then eventually, when they're able to do it on their own, that feeds that sense of power. So I always keep those three words in mind because I think they're so easy to remember.
Mm-hmm.
and so powerful, and you can have staff meetings where you talk about things and you actually do role playing.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, when people are struggling with a child and they bring a situation to the team, and you role play and have that person play the child so that they see what they're like to the child in the child's eyes. And then, are you feeling capable, valuable, powerful? All right, let's brainstorm ways that we could interact with this child in a different way. Pick one. Let's role play again. Are you feeling capable, valuable, and powerful in this interaction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's really helpful.
That's really so helpful. Thank you. And I know we don't have a whole lot more time, but I want to have time to talk about the most prevalent pitfalls you are seeing that prevent leaders from cultivating the school cultures that they're looking for. You do a lot of consulting and you support a lot of schools. So talk about the pitfalls for leaders.
Yeah. Well, so I think again, there are lots of leadership style, write books and things written about different leadership styles. And as leaders, we want to be the best leaders that we can be, and we want to lead Montessori schools that display strong Montessori principles. And so rather than looking at what your leadership style is, I think it's more powerful to kind of dig into who you are. So I think oftentimes educators come into this industry because they really want to help children.
Mm-hmm.
And, they are very, very well intended. And they bring a bunch of, for lack of a better word, baggage into the industry as they would any other industry. And so I think it's particularly important that we understand what that is, what messages we've received, we formed into adulthood. And if we can take the time to understand what kind of messages we've received about ourselves and who we are under stress, um, then we can start making that decision to transform into who we want to be. So, childhood is about formation, and adulthood is about taking the responsibility to transform into that person that you want to be. And you can't just do it by, oh, I've got this new tool, I've got this new skill, I've got this new software. It has to be, it has to be internal. It has to be internal growth, and it doesn't have to be scary because everybody's on this journey, of evolving to becoming their best self until they're no longer here. So teachers can co-voyage with their students,
Mm-hmm.
and for example, if you think about those words, capable, valuable, and powerful, if you were to sit back and have every staff member think about their work in the classroom, how capable do I feel? How valuable do I feel? How powerful do I feel? Is there an area, is it one of those three weaker for me than the others? And then they probably see that in their students, right? Because children do what we do, not what we say.
Mm-hmm.
And as leaders, it's the same thing. You might have a bunch of staff members who are seeking your attention all the time in a negative way because they're not feeling valued.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably because you don't have that sense of value built as strongly within you as you would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's where it starts. I know that was kind of long-winded, but understanding yourself and understanding your team. And again, as we spoke about earlier, so you can really lean into their strengths and support the areas where they're challenged, and that it can be open, and that it's not anything to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. We're in Montessori schools where we can work on these things together, and it's really joyful
Mm-hmm.
and really fun. So I think that's one. And then I think systems and routines. I'm huge on systems and routines.
Mm-hmm.
Strong systems and routines where people come to work and they know the calendar for the whole year. They know that every Monday afternoon they're going to be meeting at 3:30. They know exactly when the events are and who's scheduled, to do what event. They know what the standards and the expectations are in terms of preparation of the environment, lesson planning, record keeping, parent teacher conferences, um, when their one-on-one meetings are with you. One of the things that put in place as well as, for the whole year, my calendar was set. And so I would send invites to every single lead teacher so they knew exactly when they were meeting with me for the whole year. They knew when their department meetings were, their all staff meetings. And we had everybody's goals on a Google sheet with a place for them to update their benchmarks in November, February, and May. So that, and everybody knew what it was, so that, when we come to so November, February, and May, we didn't have the department meetings and the staff meetings. We all met together as a whole staff, had dinner, a little professional development, and then people would get together in pairs and talk about their goals and how far they've come along. And then everybody would share. And oh, I've got some resources on that, or I can help you with the Muriel Dwyer phonics system because I have it in my classroom, things like that, where if you're willing to take that risk and just start your year or start your culture as one of vulnerability and authenticity and realness and openness. I think that's really important.
Ask a quick question. So
Yes.
when you're referring to this system, you had every staff member have access to every other staff member's goals. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And so they knew that when they were coming in. So they were aware. And what it really does is it says, we're in this together.
Absolutely.
And they can be as vulnerable as they choose to be. And knowing that they're really going to be sharing that journey with the rest of the community.
And it's like a family.
It's like and I had not heard that before. And I really appreciate the ability for the whole community to rally together around each person's growth and development in such a strategic way. I think that's something I'd love to talk to my team about that and hear what they think. I love the idea of having the whole community invested in each one of our goals. My goals are always shared with the whole community.
That's true. Yeah, right? As a head of school, that's right.
So it's interesting to think about having goals and really then they become something that are part of the fabric of the community as a whole.
Yes. And then I think too, along those lines, strong, like, first of all, you don't change your calendar unless you absolutely have to, because you want to invite trust from your team and from your families. And evaluations are really important. Annual evaluations where these goals are set. So that you're, one-on-one meetings with the lead teachers in addition to all of your other staff meetings and admin meetings and other things that you need to do. All of those should be planned and everybody should know when they are before the school year starts. And, if you are meeting and observing every month with each teacher or more, if needed, then you have a really, the evaluation meeting is relatively smooth because you know so much about the classroom. You already had so much communication. And so setting those goals isn't going to be a surprise, and obviously you invite the staff members to share with you what they think their goals are going to be. And sometimes it needs to be, sometimes you need to direct it a little bit, like if they're missing a lot of work and, you want attendance to be one of their goals, or you've had lots of conversations with this one teacher about parent, challenges that they're having with parents, and let's work on that, so getting those goals set, having those evaluations, and then it doesn't get just thrown in a drawer, because you take those goals and you put them on this Google sheet and everybody knows what they are and it stays alive and well, for the whole year.
So that's interesting. So you have somebody who's struggling in an area. And oftentimes we think that other people don't know where we're struggling, right?
And they do.
And they all really do, but we pretend like they don't.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right. And so it's a really interesting concept to say, you have a guide who's struggling with classroom management, and you say, okay, I know we want to focus on this year, and we put classroom management on the sheet and everybody can see it. And I can imagine there might be some concern around having what they consider to be such an area of weakness, I know it's an opportunity for growth, but in their world, highlighted. Have you ever had any pushback on that?
I have had once, and it was just more of a, now, why is it that everybody gets to see these things? And I said, because we're creating a culture of support, and solution oriented, problem solving. And everybody here, we want everybody here to feel capable, valuable, and powerful. And there's no shame around this, right? Like, just because hers says classroom management and yours says attendance, neither one of them, they both need work. And these are the other great things that you do. So, so you just kind of have to, massage that and help everybody feel safe around letting go of the shame.
I think that's so interesting. Shawn, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I just want to say thank you so much for really spending time with us today. I know that you have so much more to share, and just so you all know, Shawn is presenting at the Baltimore Montessori Conference in 2023, so this June, and you can spend a whole day with her, and she'll dig in deeply and teach you the tools that she's brought to her schools over the last decades. Anything you want to add to that, Shawn?
Oh, I can't wait. I think one thing that I just wanted to add is, kind of the other pitfall is that transformational or transactional versus transformational engagement that people have, or that leaders oftentimes have. And that would be, like the third pitfall I see. And really, that's kind of like, that transformational engagement and interaction comes from really having those other things in place, understanding yourself, understanding your team, right? Having strong systems and routines in place.
Can you give us the definition of each of those so that we know what within between the two?
Yeah. So, when you're transactional with somebody, you're kind of matter of fact. You're referring to a policy without any kind of, engagement, understanding. It's niceties. You're typically guarded. You're very Stepford wife, kind of interacting with people. And so it doesn't have that kindness and firmness, right? You're either kind or you're firm, depending upon, oh, sure, or no, you're really rigid and you're really firm. And so the transformational engagement really involves presence, your full presence, your full here in the here and now. That active listening I was referring to, developing rapport, developing attunement, attuning to what it is that they're looking for, and then some mutuality, right? Like if we can get to a point where we're interacting with somebody and we have some mutuality, oh yes, maybe I didn't struggle this exact way, but sharing with somebody, I understand, I know, I can see where you feel like that. And this is what happened to me once, like having that sense of mutuality, connection before correction, of course, all the time. But if you could think about, developing a strong rapport with people and staying present and engaged, and then practicing kindness and firmness with them. And then coming, if you're able to do those things, you can almost always come to a consensual agreement on something in terms of solution-oriented problem solving, even if it's the staff members leaving the school, or, even if it means parting ways. Those things can happen with a sense of respect, and this is what needs to happen kind of mindset. And also just kind of understanding where there's drama, here's when people aren't feeling capable, valuable, and powerful, they're going to articulate how they're feeling all over the campus, and what they're thinking, and they're going to create drama. And then people all over the campus, whether it be parents or staff, fall into roles, right? And a drama triangle kind of thing is formed. And then it swirls and it swirls and it swirls and it swirls. And so helping people understand, themselves and what their role might be, and how to break free from that and move more into an empowerment triangle. So, yeah, it's hard for us to be engaged when our defense or transformationally engaged when our defense mechanisms are high. So that's why we want to practice. Well, we want to learn what those are, and then we want to practice moving from being transactional because we're scared or there's fear, hurt, anger, sadness, or one of those emotions going on, and move into I'm okay. I'm okay, and you're okay, and we can have this conversation. And I'm going to stay present and engaged with you.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What a difference.
That's a lot.
What a difference between the two of those. And the
Yeah, it's
impact
very,
it would have on your community as a whole.
yeah, it's very powerful. As leaders, we want to delegate as much of the minutia of school operations as we can so we can really invest in the adults in our school as well as the children so that the children are better, served. So you'll find that teachers or staff will start to recognize that when a parent's blowing up and having a meltdown about something, oftentimes it's really not about what's going on with the child or the teacher, it's about what's going on with them. So then you have more empathy. You instead of being immediately angry and your porcupine quills stand up, oh gosh, I wonder what, there's some fear there or there's some hurt there. And so you're able to engage with people at a different level. And usually how you're feeling, when somebody comes to you and they say something to you and it evokes fear or anger in you, that other person's feeling the same way. It may not manifest the same way. It may not look like that, but that's what's going on. And so when you can recognize how you're feeling, you're like, oh gosh, they're feeling that way too. Then you're able to meet them at a place of empathy and understanding rather than resistance, rigidity. Um, I'm right, you're wrong kind of thing.
Which never is good.
Right.
It doesn't work in any relationship ever, right? It doesn't work in our marriages. It doesn't work with the children. It doesn't work in any relationship. And those of us who are in a position of power have to be responsible for the fact that those relationships in a big way come out of us. And
exactly.
How, I often joke, but when I'm walking by in the hallway and say hello to somebody, if I don't say hello in the right way, it's easy for them to hear, if I'm distracted and I'm thinking about something else and I'm not present, they think, oh, maybe she doesn't like me. Right.
Yeah, that sense of value is not being fed.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And so we really have such a tremendous responsibility in those relationships. And I really appreciate that clarity you've brought today.
Yes. And I think working with your board on these things, this is a school that you're leading, and these things need to be really important to you. And, your board should be following suit, and, you can have parent education workshops on these things as well. A lot of the positive discipline training that goes on with parents is really helpful in this respect because it helps them understand themselves as they relate to their children in the same manner. But it's setting the tone and culture of your school in a way where the expectations are, yes, we are all works in progress. We have assets, we have liabilities, and we're all working on them. And somebody else's behavior is oftentimes something I'm inviting. So let's practice ways that we can actually invite the responses and the behaviors that we like and that are meaningful and productive.
I really appreciate that. And I know that folks will be looking forward to hearing more from you in June. I just wanted to say thank you because we need to wrap up now. I've been told that I'm not allowed to let these go over an hour.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
I'm a talker, as you see.
Yeah, but you have a lot of expertise to share. So I really appreciate that. And I want to just say thank you. I appreciate you taking this time with us and giving us so many things to chew on. And clearly you're very experienced, and clearly you have really this very interesting background and a lot to share with Montessori.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate how it just kind of serendipitously happened. But thank you so much for inviting me. I always enjoy talking about Montessori and people.
Well, happy to have you. And I just want to tell our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Shawn or her consulting, you can go to her website, which is toolhouse.com. And in the show notes, we'll also have that information. We also invite you to go to our Facebook and Instagram page, listeners. We want to say thank you to you for spending time with us today, listeners. The work you do is so very important and making such a tremendous difference in our world, and we're here to help. Join us next time. This is the Montessori Revolution. We're better together.